when you write and you use the word significant in any manuscript you write. Anybody that sees the word significant is thinking of it in the terms of statistical significance in a manuscript. But when you use significant like English in a biomedical manuscript, you lose the person because it's not English. It's not the significance in English, it's significance in science that people are looking for. So once again, I'm going to be very heavily biased to biomedical. I apologize, but for those that are not in biomedical field, you're a lot more in the social science or quantitative field. Please help me to interpret this in your heart. So science is about precision. It's about precision. And so when there's more than one interpretation of a sentence or phrase, it becomes a problem. So you must pay attention to those words and your words arrangement. That is why it is important that you give somebody else your word to read. Once somebody else reads the word or your work, and you have to start explaining the meaning, just know that there's a problem. There's no quarrel. I oftentimes smell when people you are sharing, you are giving feedback, and then you are not trying to explain what you mean. So there's a problem. You didn't convey what you meant. If you conveyed, nobody will be asking you. Neither will you be explaining it a number of times. You can't get upset. So when the reviewer sends back a feedback and they're misinterpreting what you said, it is your fault. You just did not convey what you were supposed to convey. So you must give people to read. You must also be conscious of the need for clarity. And this is a fundamental thing that you'll have to master with time. It's not an inspiration. You don't have to be a genius. You have to learn it. It's a skill you have to learn. It's simply a skill akin to crossword puzzles. Nobody comes from heaven knowing crossword puzzles, but there are people that are champions in chess, champions in crossword puzzles, and champions in logic reasoning. So you teach yourself and you consciously choose to teach yourself. So when we talk about combining words, it's a word game. You must be able to combine words in a way that you're conveying your message beautifully, and it's barrier-free communication. Nobody's stopping at each sentence and wondering what you're saying. So this is what we mean about communication, and it's a skill you need to acquire when you write a manuscript. So we'll look at a few examples. Humpty Dumpty says, when I use a word, Humpty Dumpty, in a rather small photo, says it means what I choose it to mean. There's no misinterpretation, neither more, neither less. It's what exactly I want it to mean. So let's look at the first two sentences. The first two sentences, or the first two, let's say, objective, is the determination of prevalence of jaundice in preschool Nigerian children. The second one says determination of prevalence of jaundice in preschool children in Nigeria. If there's anyone there who wants to tell me what the difference is, please just raise your hand and let me know, because those two sentences are not the same, are definitely not the same. But many times we find it being used in ways that, may misrepresent what you want to convey with that. So if there's anybody here who would just raise their hand, thank you, Fanikun. Please unmute your mic. Toby, please help me unmute Fanikun's mic and tell me what the difference is. Thank you, Fanikun. Yes. Good morning. Yes.
Yes, please. So the first one says in preschool Nigerian children, means children who are Nigerian in preschool. Why the other one say preschool children in Nigeria? So if we include all other children who are not Nigerians.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So that's exactly what it means. The first one means that when you were taking the data, you determined that this one was a Nigerian and this one was not a Nigerian. And so the people you recruited were specifically Nigerians. You did not recruit Togolese that were going to Nigerian schools. You did not recruit Malaysians who came to Nigerian schools. They were just Nigerian. And that means when you were collecting the data, you collected if you are Nigerian or not. The second one meant that every child that's schooled in Nigeria who was preschool age, you collected the data. You never at any time collected the country of origin. But you can never imagine how many times people mix these things up. They never collected ethnicity, country of origin, and then they will conclude that they did a study Nigerian children, Nigerian adults, Nigeria, and they never collected a country of origin. This is the kind of thing we mean by precision. Okay, I'll take the second one. Thank you so much, Faniko, for highlighting that. I hope that's the same that every other person who raised their hands was going to say. Khadijat, did you want to say something different? Khadija Shuab, did you want to say something different?
No, Ma, exactly what he said was what I was going to say.
Excellent, excellent. So that's it. But once again, I tell you, this is a major error you see all the time. People never collect data on country of origin or conclude that they are collecting data and stating that they are Nigerians in their title. Now let's look at the second one, the risk of cancer in HIV children. The risk of cancer in children with HIV. Can anybody highlight what is the difference in this? Okay, and this is going in another dimension that is leading me to the next slide I will be discussing. The risk of cancer in HIV children. The risk of cancer in children with HIV. What's the difference? All right, let me take that because it's a little bit more difficult and not as straightforward as the first. When you write things like the risk of cancer in HIV children, you're stigmatizing. Okay, Oguntade, you want to say something? Please go ahead. Okay, the hands is down. When you say something like the risk of cancer in HIV children, as opposed to the risk of cancer in children with HIV, it's about stigma. The way you have written that, and we do it so often without consciousness, we stigmatize the people we write about by labeling them. HIV children, cancer children, malnourished children. It's stigma. And in many top journals, this kind of stigma is not accepted. It's a normal medical people's language, science people's language. In a bid to be shorter in the things you see or the way you communicate, you tend to write things like that, and it's not acceptable. Okay, and I'm going to show you a few more when I go to stigmatizing language. You start to see. And this is what leads us to some of those things. We carelessly extend words into languages that are not conventional. For example, and once again, I apologize, I'm doing a lot more about medical language in here. The mass was biopsied. That's not English. That's medical jargon. It's a biopsy of the mass was performed. That is the right language. A biopsy of the mass was performed, not the mass was biopsied. But you see, these are languages we just fall into, and then we extend it into our medical writing, or the fairly developed leukopenia. What you want to say is the cat or the lion, or exams were performed on the patient. And you wonder, was it an exam for final year examination, or was it exam for first semester examination? And I said, no, that's not what I mean. What I mean is a medical examination. I just examined the patient on the chair. You gave room for somebody else to interpret. Because if you use this kind of language, for example, if you use it in grants writing, please note that your grants, anybody, it doesn't have to be somebody in your field. You must be able to communicate. Anytime you write, I encourage you, you must write in a way that a JSS 3 students can understand. Write your English in a way that a JSS 3 can understand. So exams, this is examination. A medical examination was performed. a school examination, write what it is that you do. An exam is subject to any interpretation. Or you use the patient was prepped. The patient was not prepped. The patient was prepared for surgery. So these are ways we bring our facts into our writing unconsciously, and we're just not communicating. I tell people that many times when you get a reject and there is no reviewer's reports, know that they just couldn't understand your English. They couldn't just go forward with your English. Many times it also contributes to that, including some other things, okay? So please watch out for medical jargons. Watch out for it. We're so used to it. Watch out for it. Avoid it. I encourage people, don't even use abbreviations. Try especially when the journal did not give you word units, don't use abbreviation. That single abbreviation can cause multiple interpretation. If you have to use abbreviation at any time, it's only after you have used it 3 times. That's the English language. Only after you have used it 3 times or more would you use an abbreviation. So by the time you're going to use it the 4th time, then it means this word may need abbreviation, and then you go ahead and abbreviate it. But once you're using the word once, don't use abbreviations. Let it be. If you don't have anything about word limitation, leave it. Because it really messes up things for most times. And please, when you're writing manuscript, that's not the time to start coining phrases or coining usages. Limit yourself to what is conventionally used. There are points in your writing or your writing life that you become an authority, and people will readily refer to whatever is the new phrase or the new jargons. It's just like the Nobel Prize showing, if you write a new phrase now, they will catch up with it. But as an early career researcher, you're starting to coin phrases, not now. Except that was an objective and you had made it very clear from the very beginning that this is the way you're going. But in your writing, please use what is conventional. And if there are new words that are still not, it hasn't taken hold. There are times that the new terminologies are starting to emerge, but it's not yet used all over the place. Be careful. Use it very minimally. Very minimally. Always read over your work. Always read over. Remember that at this point in time, you have finished your manuscript. You've written your introduction. You've written your methodology. You've written your results. You've written your discussion. We've gone through how to write your abstract. We've talked about your title. Now you're preparing to submit. So this is the things you're going through. You're going through your English. You're going through your words to ensure that things are appropriate. One of the things that you also have to be conscious of is the bias. Many times unconsciously you introduce your bias into your language. Okay, and it's sensitive. People, you don't know who the other person is. It might be the person you're consciously being biased towards. So note that you have a potential to be biased in the way you characterize people, in the way you relate your observation, and this has value laden that may trigger the other person at the other end. Be conscious of this. And I'll show you some examples now. For example, we know the world we are living in. This is a world of globalization. This is also a world where people are very conscious of male, female, other genders. Ensure as much as possible that you are using gender neutral terminologies so that you don't fall onto the wrong side of anybody. You don't write things like mankind, write human race. Don't write policeman, write police officer. Don't write chairman, chairperson. Be conscious of the gender neutrality of your language. That matters. Also, don't use languages that dichotomize people, that conveys that there is a world of they and then there's a world of we. Okay, so things like marital sex status, sexual orientation, racial or ethnic identity, or the fact that a person has a disability should not just be mentioned as if it's like that. For example, you do things like the innocent children. Who is the which children are not innocent? Or you write things like normal girls versus lesbian girls. Who says lesbian girls are abnormal? You see, these are judgmental language that is starting to convey your bias. Remember, when you're writing and you're writing research, you are showing that you're objective. Your language in conveying your materials must also show that you're objective. You are neutral. You're only reporting things as you have seen them. Avoid yourself of a language that establishes a bias. The girls, the heterosexual girls and the lesbian girls, it's okay. But the normal girls versus lesbian girls, what you're saying is that the lesbian girls are abnormal. And imagine somebody is at that other end reading. These are the things you must avoid. Be conscious, marital status, race, identity, these are sensitive things. As much as possible, I tell people when they are reporting religion, do you have to do it? You know, at the end of the day, you will now say the heads of the Christians is fat and the bum of the Muslims is slim. Who sent you that kind of study? A study that is not adding social value, but is going to increase risk of discriminatory tendency. Don't go into those areas, except there's going to be additional values. There's nothing you would punch by the computer that will not bring you. You put garbage in, garbage will come out. Only use variables that are of importance, that are of significance. And when you're doing them, please mention them graciously. Be kind to every community or persons that you are reflecting in the result of your study. The other thing that you must be conscious of is don't use languages that dichotomizes people into a them and a we. They are always sick. The studies show that they are facts. When you start using they, it shows that there is a we. And most likely when you say the they are the negative ones. Instead of saying they are always sick, you can say people with immune defects are always sick. There's no day that you are specific about what it is that you found. All right? So these are the kind of languages that you must be mindful of. As much as possible, also use fewer words. Fewer words at this point in time. Now, high degree of accuracy, accurate, postoperatively, after surgery, subsequently, after, oftentimes, often, newborn, in the event of if, implement, use shorter words as much as possible. And as much as possible, avoid technical terms. I know that people will talk about going into specialty journals. When you use technical terms, it becomes difficult to read. With this world, we're becoming a lot more global, where people in science are going to use the words in art, the piece of work they do in arts. People in arts are also reading and using the work that people do in science. If you make your work difficult to read, nobody uses it because it's full of acronyms, it's full of jargons. And if ever you have to use a technical term, please be sure that you're using it correctly. Please attend to grammar and numbers. The difficulty is not to write. The big headache is to write what you mean. And it takes a lot of consciousness to do this. The big headache is actually writing what you mean. So one is punctuation. There are just too many people that have problems with punctuation. And when I'm reading, I'm wondering, but this is something this is primary school stuff. Wrong punctuation. So let us look at this word. You're asked to punctuate. A woman without a man is nothing. Just punctuate. And these are two different punctuations that conveys different meanings. A woman, without a man is nothing. What this means is that a man that doesn't have a woman cannot amount to something like that's my interpretation. But a woman, without her man is nothing. A woman without the man around her, she amounts to nothing like. Look at the second one. A woman, without her, man is nothing. This is the same words, but the punctuation are used differently. And because punctuations are used differently, they convey different meanings. A woman, without her man is nothing. That means a woman is nothing. When you use the word inside you can do without. A woman is nothing. That's what it is saying. Okay? Or the second one, a woman, colon. Without her, man is nothing. Means this man is nothing without a woman. They are the same words. Check it, exactly the same words. The punctuation has changed the meaning. So punctuation is everything. And punctuation has purpose. It's supposed to help people understand the structural relationship within and between words in a sentence. So be conscious of punctuation. Know how to use punctuation. If you don't know, go to the person that knows. That's why it matters that you go and get an editor or somebody on your team who can edit. Otherwise, you will be missing out a lot, and you're not conveying meanings. That I've read manuscripts that the whole page can be one paragraph. A whole page. They're not passing messages, or you just see them continuously using comma. Even for places where they're full stop and I'm lost. I said, where's this coming from? So you have to be conscious of this. If you can't learn it, get people to help you with it. Okay? Another thing is numerals. The ways we use numerals, please be conscious. All words, all numbers above 10, you can write it in figures. 10 and above. Anything below 10 must be in words. 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You write it in words. It's only from 10 and above that you can write in digits. So be conscious of that. However, there are a few exceptions. If the figure is coming before a unit of measure, like 5 milligrams, 7 centimeters, then that is acceptable. Numbers with decimals or fractions within the whole number, so 4.5, 3.2 is okay. Second quintile multiplied by 5, those are things. 3 weeks, 1 p.m., class 3, trial 5, those ones can become exceptions. But as a rule of thumb, anything below 10 is in words. 3, 5, it's in words, except they are, used in this kind of phrases. And then these are my final words. Manuscript writing rather than abstract writing is a skill. Every single human being can acquire that skill. Every single human being can acquire the skills to write. Some might acquire it faster, some it might be just so easy for them, but there's no human being that cannot acquire the skill. And you must choose to acquire the skill. Why am I ever emphasizing this? I've done this manuscript writing over and over. One of the things I see is that many people, when they try the new skill and it's not coming to them easily, they go back to their old ways of doing things. And I feel that many times they go back because they seemingly have successes in terms of alternatives. What do I mean by alternatives? For example, myself, I will not, as a routine, go to a journal, publish my paper in a journal that is lower than Q2. I would not. If it's corpus index and I'm working with colleagues or other people that otherwise feel comfortable, it's okay. But as a first author, myself, Morenike, I would not. Because of that, I have to follow the rules that governs writing well for a Q1, Q2 journal. However, I'm not sure if he's here. I had somebody I worked with. It was a beautiful piece of work this guy did. He's been writing before, but he came to manuscript writing workshop. He paid, though, this thing that I'm teaching you, he paid 20,000 naira. And then he went to about statistics workshop. He paid maybe 250 or 180. And he brought out a beautiful piece of work. And what happened? He went to the first journal, there was a reject. Straight, he just went back to his old journals that had no index. I felt horrible. Why? Because there was a cheap alternative. And once you give yourself that cheap alternative, you would fall back. You fall back to that your old ways. So you are the ones that choose to acquire skills, and you are the ones that must choose to grow. From my experience doing this training, I found that people that have been writing before and have been publishing before, they're a lot more difficult to change, because the way they've been writing, they've been publishing, but they are running after numbers. They're not running after quantity. So they want their professor, and they will get their professor. But if you, as from the very beginning, are after social value and visibility as a researcher, and wanting to be in the international space as a scholar, you must choose to write the way I am teaching you. And other people will teach you. I have taught you from my own experience. There are many other people that will teach you from their experience, and there are lots of people that are wanting to teach. Acquire those skills and move up in visibility and move up into the international space, and promotion will come as a secondary option. Promotion will come. You will become a professor, but you'll become a professor with integrity, with a name, with the clout, with the field of work, and with the skills that you can teach others. Please be aware that you as a scientist, you are responsible for protecting the integrity of science, and therefore you must do everything to protect the integrity of science through your writing. You must never, ever put out things there that are not true. You must use languages that must enable people to interpret your work also and reflect what is truthful of what you are. Science is not about you. Science is not about, or manuscript writing is not about you acquiring the number of manuscripts. Your primary reason of writing manuscript is to share knowledge, is to put knowledge in the public space so that people can take that knowledge and move to the next. Take that knowledge and move to the next level. That's what it is. And therefore, in that space, you must ensure as much as possible that you are putting the right thing. In fact, anytime you find out the information you did or put wrong, retract. Retract. It's all about integrity and less about you. On that word, I'll say thank you for listening, and I'll open to questions. If you have questions, please raise your hands. If you have questions about anything in the manuscript writing workshop up to date, please raise up your hand and ask your question, and then I'll read if there's anything in the space also. Ellen Odega is asking, please could you give me a use of an example of a discriminatory use of marital status? I believe one is either single or married. Should we say married and unmarried? No, I don't think it's about married and unmarried when we talk about marital status. I think it's about the way we might project, marital status. For example, when you're writing and then you write as if those that are cohabiting is a bad thing, because married. Okay, let's look at this. You write married and single, but you know that there are people that are living together. They're not married. They're not single. So if you write this kind of marital status, married, single, the people that are not married or not single would not be able to identify themselves. But when you have a recognition that there's a third or possible third marital status, married, not married, others, or cohabiting, or once you put the others, there's a recognition that there are others. So it's not discriminatory when you say married, single, and others. Okay, those that are cohabiting are not married, but they're not unmarried also, in that sense. Otherwise, what you're saying is that my world is a world of two. And then once you are writing, you don't project the cohabiting as the bad people. I'm not saying you shouldn't write, but the languages you use, for example, I say things like, let's say you did it, and then it's those that are cohabiting that have a lot of STIs. Let's say something like that, okay? And then you project it like they, they had STI, and when you're explaining it, it's like, oh, why wouldn't they have STI now when they're not married? And you look at, I'm sorry, I'm not giving the best of example, but that dichotomy is one of the examples. One of the examples with sexual orientation in dichotomy is the recognition that there's a third, a male, female, others. Gives that to the room of others, because there are people that are intersex, It's not intersex because I choose to be intersex. They're intersex because of birth. There's a birth that makes you a male because of your genitals and makes you a female because of your genitals, intersex because of your genitals. So when you don't recognize that third, there's a discrimination. Whoever is intersex is lost and is either forced to be who they are not, or is definitely not a recognition. And there might be those of us in research that are doing this, and we're discriminatory in our position because of our bias. You can't bring your bias to research. Research is about telling the truth and putting the truth out there in the world. So if I don't like intersex, or if I don't believe there's a third sex, it's your belief. That's not the truth there is. Okay, that's not the fact there is in the world. And therefore, teaching and writing in a position that disacknowledges that there's a third is discriminatory. Okay, and that's your bias affecting the way we do research. Ellen, I hope I conveyed, I explained that a little. I hope I conveyed that a little. Professor Adejima says, keep monitoring your citation, excellent global presence and impact. As you do this, desire to raise the bar and improve your status at least yearly. Excellent, Professor Adejima. I hope you can unmute your mic and convey this better. Some people don't really appreciate why this is needed, but if you truly want visibility, this is a way to go. Okay. I can see a Karike promise, but please, Professor Adejima, ahead of promise speaking, can you just unmute your mic and please explain this very brilliantly to people? Thank you.
Okay, sorry, I've been unmuted now. Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you very much, Prof, for this beautiful presentation. What I'm trying to drive home at is, at a level, what you're looking for, maybe you just want to have a number and you're working at numbers. But at a time, those numbers are not going to count anything. And then it becomes very important how visible you are. So if you have large quantums of numbers that does not make you visible, then it becomes useless. One. Yeah. Two, there are certain things you want to aim for, and the requirements is, for example, what's your value of your citation? And you have 400 papers, and your citation is 5, 10, 100, or 200, or 250, or whatever. Then you are not qualified. Yeah. So, and you have somebody who has maybe 40 papers, and with 40 papers, that person's citation is over 1,000. I mean, I have somebody's citation who is 4,000. Read other people's biographies and try to see, raise the bar for yourself, not because of anybody, just being in the world of your own and desire to raise the bar. What Prof told us now is, it's very painful to me. I don't know the person, but to have paid that 120,000 and paid the other money for the statistics means that that person is a person also in a high cycle, so to speak. He has a very scholarly mind, but one timid problem or rejection pushed the person back. But if you remember that you have a goal, you have an aim that you are working towards, then you're not going to be allowed to push back and go for the alternatives. So that's what I just wanted to say. Raise the bar, improve your status, keep working, and apply for things that will require more than what you have, so that you keep aspiring to to do better for yourself and for the whole world and for the scientific community. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Professor Adejima. Excellent. I mean, if there's anything we're doing here, is helping you join the scholars around the world. Believe me, you can't be in the research field and think you can't be there. You can. All of them don't have 2 heads. They don't have 7 fingers. They don't have 4 hands. They're exactly like you. The only thing is that they've pressed forward. They've pressed against the mark. They have chosen a path of excellence. And whatever it takes, there's no excellence that doesn't come without rigor in itself. If it's only one paper you do it well. This is not a game of numbers. Remember, science is about social value. It's less about you. It's about changing the paradigm with the information, facts that you can generate. And with this fact, people start to garnish things and they start to get truths, and they can make the life of mankind a lot better just because you started doing good research. So that's all we're pushing them. Okay, Promise, you can unmute your mic and then I'll take other questions in the chat box.
Thank you so much, Prof. Good morning, everybody. Prof, my question is a little bit outside today's discussion. Well, number one is I'm conducting a work on sexual minorities, and with my group, number one, the thing is that we are trying to see. We are kind of confused if we are going to use sex or gender or both. So that we don't exclude some persons, because if we put only sex, just be probably just binary, because then
it's not binary. I'm having difficulty hearing you, Promise.
Sorry, can you hear me now, Prof?
Yes, it's echoing. I think when you're speaking, maybe you're speaking into a mic. It's echoing.
Okay, how about better?
No, it's low now. It's gone low. Maybe when you speak, move the mic a little further away from your mouth.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So as I was saying, we are kind of confused if we are going to use sex or gender. Now, based on the definition of sex, that's the biological aspect of it, and then gender when there are other explanations to it. So that is the conundrum we are in now. Now, secondly, as regards the methodology, the sampling technique, I was of the opinion that we use snowballing because of the sect that we are working with, and then some others are more some are thinking that it's better we use convenience sampling, but I'm just kind of confused in that direction, Prof. So an assistance will be very much appreciated.
Okay, so I'll just address that briefly. It's excellent that you're doing work with among sexual minority. There's very little research in that area, and therefore going into that area starts to put you in a space that is best explored to improve the health and well-being of sexual minorities. However, if you're doing work with sexual minorities, there are two things. If you're doing sex, there are three sex: is male, female, and intersex. However, if you choose to use the binary, that must be defined very clearly in your methodology. That when you say sex, I am saying male and female, okay? But of course, that comes in with the element that there isn't a space to recognize the third. So if I do those kind of questionnaires, I'll say male, female, and others, so that others can choose. There might be very few, and then when you're doing your analysis, you can lump it up and say this is how we dealt with it, or because you want to use that binary, you removed it. But your work must show that there's an acknowledgement that there's something else, okay? However, when you do gender, that's a different thing. Gender is male, female, trans, where that's gender, that's a different thing. So, and if you do it, you can do male, female, and others, and let others identify who they are, and then you can do that kind of descriptive analysis to show that they are others and this is what others are. That's that. Then the second is that if you decide to use snowballing is a convenient sample, but all of them are just non-probability sampling. So snowballing, but for sexual minorities, because they're hard to reach, snowballing is what is used, is recognized. Of course, it has its limitation because it's not a probability sampling. And you must acknowledge that limitation. But for hidden population, snowballing is the way to go. Even snowballings, there are ways you can do snowballings in ways that you can improve the distribution. And you must read about that. That's why you must read about it. But snowballing is a non-probability sampling. Convenience is a non-probability sampling. And non-probability samplings introduces bias in the recruitment strategy. And you must acknowledge that as a limitation. I hope that helps. You're welcome. We have another question here from Dr. Akishipo. What is the current status of using active and passive words in writing? Some journals and supervisors will not allow active words, while some scholars promote it. Once again, whatever journal you use, be mindful of what they want. I don't think any journal says active and passive words. I think it's the reviewers that introduces their own bias and says don't use active or don't use passive. As much as possible, use active. I think that's the way the world is going. It's about active rather than passive. And your active also shows that you own the process. And it's a lot more driven from the American angle. You find a lot more British being in the passive. What I encourage is that once you're doing what you're writing, please write in a way that does less of reflecting you. And even when you're doing passive doesn't have to say I. Or even when you're doing active does not necessarily mean you're saying I. As much as possible, remove yourself from the writing and pass the message as objectively as possible. When there's a lot of seeing you inside that writing, there is a tendency to reflect that there's a bias in it because it's you that is being there. Your writing must be, as much as possible, projecting the objectivity of your study. And that's why there's always a limitation section. The limitation section says what this, how far you can use the data, how well you can interpret. Please acknowledge that this doesn't make it perfect. You must be truthful in limitations. The limitations is not, remember, that paper is not about you. You are not in this at all. It's about producing facts for the world to use. Okay? So you must, as much as possible, not be seen in that space. And you can do it even if it's active writing. If you ask me, Dr. Akishipe, how to go, I would use active words, except the the reviewer now says don't. I would go active in my use of language. But if you're in your school, which is the difference with supervisor, they don't allow it. It's your degree you want to collect to. Please don't use it. It's your degree you want to collect. Please follow the rules of the school and get your degree. But beyond that, once you become an active writer, manuscript writer, I will encourage the route of active use of word without being you in it. Don't use I, we in that effort of being active. I hope that helps, Dr. Akishipe. I hope I've answered your question. Toby, please help me to our first question. Thank you everyone for your kind words. I'm looking for questions. Adebimpe Yusuf asks here, a manuscript be retracted after? Yes, if you write a manuscript and you find out later that there was an error in your data analysis or your data collection, please write and retract it. Just write to the publisher. You discovered that there was something wrong, and therefore the information you're conveying may be misleading. You want to retract. It's very honorable. Okay, please retract it. Okay, remember, it's not about you. It's about information to improve the world. That's what you're doing. So you can put out a manuscript there that you know and you are conscious of, that you're not sharing truth, and then leave it there. It's not okay. It's not about you. I keep saying this, it's not about you. Research is not about you. It's social value. It's improving the world. It's adding information that people into existing information, so that with this we're all climbing the ladder, the rungs of the ladder. Your information is a ruler, and we're getting to the ultimate truth that enables us to improve the world. So yes, Adebimpe Yusuf, if you do find out that what you have put out there is not factual, please be honorable to retract it. Okay. Ola Ibigami ask a question. Can we have a session on what to do? Well, I'm sure if you saw the list, there was something on peer review. Can we have a session on what to do when our manuscripts get rejected? There's a session on handling on peer review process, that will be dealt with then. Mutiyasi Rahman said, do we need to indicate theoretical or conceptual framework in manuscripts or on thesis? We had this whole workshop is about manuscript writing, and we had a session at the very beginning about theoretical and conceptual framework. And yes, for a top journal, a top manuscript, your entire research should be based on a theoretical or conceptual framework. Once it's not based on a theoretical or conceptual framework, you're just wading in the stream with no direction, and you increase the risk of your reviewers trying to give you direction, which was not actually the direction you yourself wanted to go. So yes, you should drive your research with a theoretical or conceptual framework. Okay, please, what limits citations of work that has been published? What limits citation of works? Yes, many times when your work is published, the irony is that people read and they can read through and tell you you're not telling the truth, and they're going to leave it. Let me tell for one, I don't know if it's here, but I have a supervisor who published a piece of work. I wrote it straight. This is a lie. This is a lie. Why? He did a systematic or scoping review, and he said he looked at Scopus, and I said it's a lie. You could never have looked at Scopus. You don't have access to Scopus. So how did you do that? And then he says, oh, I went to Google Scholar and the articles. I said, then you should have said you went to Google Scholar. He didn't, because you never went to Scopus. Nobody's going to touch that paper and reference it, except you're struggling to find references. So yes, top scholars know what is not true. And then when they read your methodology and it's not okay and it's published, they won't touch it. That's it. And also, people go to places. If I see a reference, I have to reference. I Google and I need a reference. I see one in Lancet and I see one in one journal. I don't know his name. I'm not going to pick the one that doesn't have a name. I'm just going to pick the one in Lancet, because Lancet is trusted in terms of its peer review. It doesn't mean it's perfect. It doesn't mean it's perfect. All those things that I'm saying, you're talking about the majority. It doesn't mean they're perfect. It doesn't mean they don't have problems. But you will go to the trusted one, rather than. So yes, the truth is that many articles that are published elsewhere, the methodology is not strong. It's not strong. It won't pass the rigor test. It won't pass the rigor test. So, and remember, we're building on truth. So people will just leave what they know. Once they read the paper and they say, and they're going to leave it, and they won't cite it. Explain the gray area in IT. Okay. We have just a few more minutes. I don't know if there's anybody that's hand is raised. Okay. Promise, is this an old and or is it a new and? Thank you. Can the data collected from one research and already published be used for another research? Excellent question. Omolala Oshosoya, yes, it can be used, and that's called secondary data analysis. So even if you have a data, you can reuse it. If you find other public data, you can reuse it. It's called secondary data analysis. And that what the difference is that when you do a secondary data analysis, all you can generate is an hypothesis. You cannot establish a definite answer to the question, because that data was not collected to be powered to answer the new question. Once the data is powered to answer the primary question, it means that the key outcome was what was used to determine the sample size. If you are doing a biomedical research, even if you're doing qualitative research, you can use your qualitative data to generate secondary outcome. I just done the same in my thesis, and I did secondary outcome, which was not the primary, and I already see two other things. I want to reanalyze the primary data, which is qualitative, to generate. Okay, so yes, you can. The headache is that you have to be strategic in a way that you do not repeat data. So if the primary data had reported and had done an association between age and sex, your secondary data can't do an association between age and sex and repeat that answer, because that answer question had been answered in the primary data or in another manuscript. You must be looking for something that the other manuscripts had not answered in publishing and reanalyzing. What you must acknowledge is the secondary data. And that also comes with its limitation, because it was not powered for it. There are variables you might not have collected, which is very important in determining the confounders for the study. And those are acknowledged as limitations. Okay? And that's very important. But yes, It's very powerful to use a lot of secondary data to generate hypotheses that people can then build on. I have just about 1 more minute. When we're writing about community service initiatives grantmanship, does it follow the regular format of writing for a grant? Whatever they ask for, please note that grants people will ask you for formats. They will give you formats. They will tell you what you're looking for. Follow their formats. Okay? I don't know about community service initiatives grantmanship, but once they ask you, they would have a format. If they do not have a format, please use a format that answers the issue that you're raising comprehensively. Okay? The outline of a manuscript is not the outline for writing your grants. It's not. If they give you word limits, keep to the word limit. If they don't give you word limits, don't be verbose, but ensure that you write a comprehensive. And grantsmanship writing is different. I'm not taking this, Baba. It's outside the scope of my work, and I didn't prepare for it, so I can't give you guidance on that. But I hope what I've said helps a little way. This is my last question. Dr. Doja Awofisayos asks, if a large amount of data is generated in a particular study, can it be used to publish more than one publication without unnecessarily fragmenting the work? Please note that when you generate a number of large data, you must have generated the large data based on an objective. It's not okay if your data generation is not answering an objective. If you, however, have multiple objectives, please know that you can write multiple manuscripts. The headache is if you write a manuscript that has more than one objective, you're going to struggle. This is manuscript writing, not thesis. Thesis, you can have 8 objectives and write the book. Remember that you have the space to write an 800-page thesis. It's most welcome. But manuscript is not like that. You can't write a manuscript with 35 pages, exclusive of the reference. That's beyond it. So ideally, when you're writing the manuscript, is focused. You want to tell a story, and it's just an objective. By the time you're writing 2 objectives, and the manuscript is starting to become a lot complex. By the time you get to 3 objectives, that's complex. Not that it's impossible, but you must have hard skills. Why? Because you're going to be wrapping up your conceptual framework and theoretical framework to tell 3 different stories. That is a major problem in itself. Not problem, but this is a good problem, but a difficult, complex thing to do. So limit yourself. The fact that you've written your thesis and you had 8 objectives doesn't mean all those your data must come into one manuscript. That might just be equal to 5 manuscripts or 8 manuscripts in itself. Even the data you generated can end up generating 10 manuscripts. I don't know, but believe me, when you say manuscript, it means you have a conceptual framework and you have an objective that is clear and answer your objective. It's not about pulling all the data in your thesis into one paper. I hope that helps. On this note, I have to stop now. Thanks, everyone. If there are other questions, I will answer, but otherwise, have a wonderful day, everybody. God bless you. Bye.